Hello, everybody. Welcome to our first sessions in Wings. This is the idea that we want to open up to you guys, your CEOs, entrepreneurs, investors, and retail owners, everyone in the service industry. This is our research and development from our high robotics lab and everything we do with Wings, and also participating with many of the businesses out there and even throwing ourselves into the businesses and share kind of our findings and our guidance in terms of the future of retail, specifically the path to autonomous retail. So in this first session, we're very excited to kind of share what we've been really working in the labs behind the scenes and working with other businesses and discussing with other innovators in the industry. And this is kind of really allowing us together to have a conversation about what's the path moving forward with the services industry. Okay, so today's topic is going to cover essentially this. How are we going to think about transforming a traditional retail that we're very familiar with step by step, which becomes a hybrid model, and then somewhere in the future, a fully autonomous model? This will give us a great perspective in terms of how we want to approach this, as well gets us into slight more detail into the process, and as well as into some fundamental ideas so that we all can be on the same page, or at least try to be on the same page. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about the different topics that we want to discuss today. And we're going to start out by really looking into the levels of autonomy. So internally within our labs, we are thinking about retail and the autonomous retail industry moving forward, transforming. We need to start communicating about how and what are those retailers, at what level of autonomy they are, and what does that really mean? As you know, in the automotive industry, we've got 6 levels of autonomy from nothing all the way to fully full self-driving cars. Similarly, we want to kind of have a concept or standardized idea so that as companies are building all these automation solutions, robotic solutions, that we can have a reference to whether a retail is somewhere in the autonomy or hybrid level. So we'll discuss that a little bit more. Again, this is preliminary and there's much more levels, but we'll dabble into that a little bit more. We'll talk also about what do you expect from an autonomous retail, right? So it's one thing to realize, okay, my stations are automated, my workflows are automated, but as an autonomous retail versus the ones we have today, what does that entail? What does that bring in? What other changes, what are expectations that can dictate as to why you are going with this path? Is it just for label problems? Is it for cost? What is it really that brings in the game? We'll talk about that too as well. We're going to dive into a little bit our view in terms of stations and workflows, essentially really discussing the internal logistics and how we can really take those logistical ideas and start moving it forward and optimizing it as we take step by step to automate these retailers. And we are also going to look at, after we understand these concepts, what is the best way to automate in a highly impactful way? Where do you start? What station? What workflow? Where does it really make any sense there? So we'll share our findings on that process and what we have gained from that experience and how we're going to go about actually realizing where the value add is in the short term as well in the long term. We're going to share with you also 2 different models of how you want to implement automation when you are involving stations and workflows, as well as customer experience and elevating the staff experience too as well. We'll share some examples on that too as well, so you get a better understanding, some of which you could relate to as an owner or a full retail or even a staff or a customer experience. Throughout this session, we are going to look at the comments. If you have questions and answers, we'll try to answer those questions during the session or at the end of the session. Either way, depending on time, we'll have those answers questions even afterwards. So we're very excited to start talking about this. So let's begin. This is exciting. Okay, levels of autonomy. Traditional retail is considered to be a retail that has nothing, literally no automation. So this is called L0. There's no workflow automation. No station is automated. This is including the fact that you're not accepting digital orders. Critical. Also, the end-to-end logistics is all human labor. The end-to-end logistics is involving a lot of human-to-human communication. And the customer experience to the business in terms of interactivity is highly fixed, meaning the customer has to follow certain steps to go into the restaurant, order something, or the retail in this case, and how they take the order and leave. So this is kind of the lowest denominator. Of course, we know that most retailers are at L1, which they have at least one workflow automated. In most cases, it's the ordering. If you have digital orders, if you have digital orders enabled in your retail, then you're technically a hybrid already. And so we want more of those, and you want to move up that level. Essentially, what it means, you got one workflow that's automated. There is optionally, you may have a reduction in human labor. That really ties and depends upon your logistical setup and what workflow you're automating and whether that removes human labor or not. But nonetheless, we'll talk about why these are very important differentiation and where the ROI matters. Any workflow automation will always have a reduction in human-to-human communication as well as human energy. So essentially, there is much more higher ROI where you have the staff focus on what they need to do. Finally, the customer-to-business interaction is now becoming more versatile rather than being fixed. So when we added digital orders, prior to that, at traditional retail, you have to go into the retail, you have to wait in line, you have to talk to the cashier and make an order. Now with digital ordering, you can order outside, at home, while you're driving. So what we'll realize as you get more automation features into your retail, in fact, you're creating more versatility for your customers as well as how you are serving your customers at the end of the day. That's the value add later on. We up one level, and what you get between the L2 and L3, now you can label yourself as an autonomous retail. Essentially, at that point, you've got multiple workflow automation, and they don't have to be connected with each other. It should be like one workflow automated somewhere and somewhere else. You have at least one station automated to be an L2, right? So you have one station that is fully automated, and you've got a couple of workflows already automated. And we'll talk about more in detail what that really means and why is that is important. You have further reduction in human labor since the station itself is automated. You have further reduction in human-to-human communication, of course, because of your workflows. And now the customer-to-business interaction is also more versatile from a delivery standpoint. So now I can order from anywhere. I should be able to pick up my orders also from anywhere. If I want to pick it up to go, I want to go through a drive-through, if I want to have a dine-in experience. So that, in that case, for a restaurant, but also for retail, how they deliver their product to their customer. So slowly but surely, you're adding more versatility, and that's how you kind of measure your autonomy and your value coming out of the system. Finally, for the L3 level, essentially all your workflows right now are automated. And here we're talking about the internal logistics. We're not involving the external logistics, essentially like how you get your ingredients or inventory into the retail, and also anything to do with waste management, cleaning, and recycling. So we kind of just remove that for a second and focus on the internal logistics. So in this case, if you're an L3 retail, then all your workflows has been automated. Now, at least two adjacent stations are also automated. So versus one station far away, another station far away, but where a workflow and two stations connected that workflow, they're both fully automated, that gives you up to an L3 autonomy level. Again, this is preliminary, the way we're describing it, just to kind of help understand how this goes. The human-to-human communication is actually very limited at the time and really is only needed for intervention. So for example, the system needs support, the system gets stuck, it's not fully fledged autonomy with correctness and things like that, but it's enough where you need like a concierge, a person who wants to administer rather than manage these stations. So the stations are going on by themselves. Furthermore, the customer to business interaction will continue to be most versatile. When you start going beyond L3, now you're getting to more of a sustainable retail. Now you are actually a retail that is fully electrified. There's no gas or petrochemicals. You want to be more green. You have your waste management, cleaning, and recycling are now automated. Whether that is also automated fully externally, but it is part of your automation process that you don't have to worry about cleaning, and it's just you have a higher standard of cleanliness at this particular retail. 80% of the components, whether it's the retail itself, the robotics, the automation, the software, all the energy involved, is about 80% of those should be at least renewable and recyclable. The human workforce is actually optional here. If anything, you may have a concierge to just administer to make sure customers are happy, and the whole thing is automated by itself. And of course, this particular interaction between the customer and the business is fully personalized. So we take into account the person's allergies, their sensitivities, their concerns, where they need to go, and all that system that's been developed is working one-to-one with each of these customers. Now, we can go beyond those. There's L5, L6, but we're going to just limit it for this particular presentation for today. All the topics we have, they can be a full session on their own. So this is the first introduction, and we'll go through. Okay? So let's take an L2 example, autonomy. Let's just go with an L2. What do we expect from that? What does it really bring to the table when you have an L2 automated retail? The most important thing that we have discovered is that the goal for this is an increase in confidence to everyone involved, not just the customers, but people who are involved at the business itself, whether it's a concierge, whether it's a staff, no matter what it is, everybody has a higher level of confidence doing their operations, whether it's ordering, whether it's assembling, whether it's prepping, and so on and so forth. And we'll talk about how do you do that? What does that mean, increased confidence? Ultimately, the retail also has to have a more efficient business model with a higher ROI. Essentially, what we want is that if you have a retail who's doing 600 orders a day, and you went all about automating, bringing robotics and solutions to your system, and still meeting the 600 orders a day, can't quite hit that higher, then you're not really leaping forward and taking advantage of properly engineering and structuring your automation and logistical systems. You have to at least double that, so your I/O bandwidth has to really go up. So how do we do this? How do we increase confidence? How do we increase the ROI? Really, the most important part is that every single station is an input and an output, and we need to increase that bandwidth of that station. Additionally, as you do so in every station, the whole retail itself will have a higher I and O, meaning that you're able to support more customers coming in, able to produce more consistently, dependably to these customers. So let's go further. That also means that now each station that you are actually upgrading to make it more automated has to have an increase in concurrent operations. So if I have one person assembling and then I decide to get a robot just to do the assembly, and yes, it's dependable, but maybe not as fast, now I'm doing still one operation at a time as an order. If I have to get another robot to do two orders at the same time, we have to start asking the question, is that worth the price? What kind of system that allows me to take multiple orders coming in where my automation system is able to do concurrent operations and be able to produce more output on that station? So that's very critical as you scale up your automation. So don't try to automate your logistics just so that you can get some automation. You want to see a much higher value add from an I/O standpoint. This essentially really enforces the importance of increasing staff focus on that station and their permanence. What we've discovered with many research and talking to a lot of retailers and actually studying a lot of these things, as well as us working at retail places, that if a staff member leaves their station for whatever reason, essentially they have to deal with their input or their output, which is now out of their concern, you're throwing money at the table, right? For highest efficiency, the staff member on that station needs to be focused, needs to have a high confidence that, let's take an example of an assembler. I have my ingredients, orders are coming through, I need to assemble these orders. I just need to know that these inventory that I have in front of me to assemble the order, I have it all up to date. I don't have to call out to be refilled, I don't have to throw something that's been expired, and I know that whatever comes in, nothing will come in where I cannot fulfill. So now you're creating an increase of confidence. Additionally, when I'm done with the assembly, I don't have to leave my station and take that assembled product and putting somewhere. That's a separate concern. So it's very important to really have the model of separation of concerns to increase the focus and the ROI on those particular stations. Now, when you have all this set up pretty well, make sure as much as you elevate the experience of the staff, we're seeing an increased personalized features with autonomy. When you have things automated, then you have your inventory nice and designed to fulfill requirements for people who have certain personalization importance. Not just sensitivities and allergies, but cleanliness, and also delivering those based on particular people how they want it. I could be in my car, but I decide to park instead of taking a drive-through and go inside and pick it up somewhere else. So this versatility of the systems is very critical to deal with the customers that are highly dynamic. So essentially what we're looking at in factory designs, most of the time, the I/O is figured out. They know exactly in manufacturing what input needs to come in, what process needs to happen, and when the output needs to come out. But in retail environment, we're dealing with people. People are dynamic people. They can come at any time. They can order anything they want. They have a certain set of personalization importance to them from allergies and sensitivities. They want to know when they want to have the order. They want to know where they want to have the order. And all of that is unique to every single person. So now you're thinking about how you can have this robotic automation system or autonomous system to be able to be dynamic as people come in. Speed up at peak hours, slow down when traffic goes down, and also really allow all these people to feel very confident. They don't have to do a lot of communication to get their orders fulfilled. Which brings us to another thing, language independency. This is where a lot of the other industries kind of checked off the boxes, but retails now has the ability, if they are becoming more autonomous, is that the interface to the customer has to be really cared of, personalized to the user, not just what I can have, what I can buy, what service I can do, what is my issues in terms of sensitivities and allergies, but also what's the language that I'm speaking with or I'm communicating with or using to speak to that retail. Right? So a lot of menus right now you'll see in services are stuck in one language, and you have a lot of different customers that comes through. This is very important. As we scale out to autonomy, you want to open that door and remove that friction further out. For this to really happen, and we talked about how people are dynamic, currently a lot of the platforms that the retail use in digital world, they're kind of push and pull, right? They're push and pull. Where we're going to go to is that we're going to have a real-time bidirectional communication system, meaning all the components inside the retail are in real time, and the consumer is when they connect to that business through an app, through a website, however it may be, it's all in real time. You have an inventory just goes out, and within milliseconds, everybody connected to that retail is notified. Their menu is updated in real time. They can never, ever order something that you cannot fulfill. So instead of trying to figure out how to fix bad orders, you really not start to think about how can I create an environment where that should never happen in the first place. So you need to start talking about the communication back and forth. And that has to be real time and bidirectional. Not just the retail talking to the customer, but the retail needs to be aware who's looking at me. How many people are watching my menu? How far are they from the retail? What's the probability for that customer is going to order any second right now? Do I prep it? Do I not prep it? So when you're in that level, now the capabilities and the abilities of this retail, it opens a huge amount of doors for what we can do and really elevate that experience both for the customer and the staff if there's money. So this essentially what we talked about is transparent inventory and business operations. When I come in as a customer to retail, when I have a transparent view of the business, not only from inventory standpoint, but also from operations. Are you in peak hour? What's the traffic looking like? How many orders are coming through? What are the exact probability of me getting my order if I order just right now this particular items, right? So we want to get even more accurate calculations for the customer, again, to increase their confidence. So they don't have to worry. So they can have to say that I can now, I won't be late to my office. I won't be late to something else. I'm able to schedule something because this particular retail has informed me. It's transparent in real time. And anything that happens, that changes, I'm notified pretty much almost immediately. Finally, this is where you want to start thinking about sustainability a little bit. As you start putting automated solutions, again, anything, robotics, software, hardware, whatever it may be, you need to start thinking about how you can scale by modularly creating those components. Same thing, we go back to the assembly. You really want that I/O to be really high. You want to build it out so that, hey, your customers are loving this place and you want to increase the bandwidth of that station. You should be able to add a much more smaller, scalable, modular component and boom, now it can handle more I/O. You want to reduce it, you can do it too as well. So think about that technological steps rather than a full end system that is just siloed rather than all connected together. Okay, so this is kind of high level. So let's kind of step a little bit in the future to see what that probably would look like. So this is an example of a setup of a what we call an ASR2, not really an ASR3 or 4, just an ASR2. And what we're seeing here is a basic drawing of a retail, and in this case, perhaps a QSR, a quick serve place. In this case, it's an ASR. And now we have a concierge in the back, really just dealing with making sure everything's operating fine. There's no POS, there's no cashier, really. Essentially, anybody can go anywhere and really just be serviced and their needs. It's all live, it's a real-time platform, and essentially the concierge is there only to manage exceptions. Other than that, I think we empower the customer to just kind of roam around, and all the robots will be there to fulfill your service beautifully. So in this case, we've got robotics. We're showing kind of our robotics, but it could be any solutions you may have. They're operating 24/7. That's the value of them. They offer efficient deliveries in this case. They can make them in the back and take them out anywhere they want. They're safe and clean. That's really what it is. Additionally, you probably have robotic sensors all over the retail just to kind of get an awareness of the environment. Who are the people there? Where are they? Are they safe? And if they want to be delivered in the car, if somebody just walking by and they want to just pick it up and go outside the retail or inside the retail, they want to dine in. So all of these options adds another value to the service for that particular retail. And let's talk about the mobile app. We talked about the future of mobile apps becomes really AI. Essentially, what every customer sees on their phone is really for them, highly personalized to their needs. And all the services displayed are relevant to them. They will never, if I'm vegan, for example, I really don't want to see any meat products that you have, as an example, in a QSR restaurant. That way, I'm confident. I don't have to worry that I'm going to make a mistake because it's not in front of me. What's in front of me is what is good for me. We're talking about a future of crypto authentication ID. So essentially, your data about your personal information is crypto, and it's yours. You manage that. The retail itself will no more need to collect your data and track you and all of that. It's not important because the ASR or the autonomy is all about just-in-time operations. So you want what you want right now, we'll deliver to it. If you become vegetarian the next 10 minutes, just send a request. We'll make sure it's a vegetarian product. So we don't have to track you, and you're a free being to do whatever you want. And this interface is live. As soon as an ingredient, let's say, is gone from the back, boom, everything and everybody connected to the system essentially will be notified about it, and you will never have the ability to order something that doesn't exist. So let's go into the retail just to kind of walk into it for just a little bit. It's essentially you can just walk in, find a table, sit down, and just order, and it'll be delivered right to you. And when you're done, just walk away, and other robots will come in to start cleaning. There'll be a concierge there not managing, but administering, making sure everything's working beautifully. And he is a high paid person in this case to ensure that all the operations are working and the customers are pretty happy. So there's always going to be a human involved, especially when you're dealing with such a retail. So this is kind of like a glimpse of how we see the future. Of course, there's more to this, much more deeper to this, but let's move on. So let's talk about stations and workflows. Let's start diving into a little bit on the logistical aspect of the system. In a traditional retail, it looks something like this. So in this model that you see in front of you, there's really nothing automated. You got from ordering, from the customer logistics, to a list of orders, to the assembler, to creating the product that's getting the ingredients from the prep, and also that ingredients are coming from storage, all the way out done to a person or a customer to pick up their order. So that is essentially what a traditional retail looks like. And then we'll start diving deep into all of these. As you would notice, there's 3 layers of heavy, high error rate concepts in this particular model. A human operation, well, that's not something that we can highly depend upon, but nonetheless, all of these are human operations, required energy that needs to be done and involved in it. Second, we have the human workflow. Essentially, to finish from one station to another, a human needs to be involved to bring that output from one station to become an input from another station. Moreover, there's a lot of human-to-human communication in case of something is missing or inform somebody they need something else. So this is kind of like what we call the data pipeline between the 2 stations, and that's kind of the bidirectional information that needs to become digitized. So let's dive more into what we think a station looks like. It's pretty simple. The station has an input. There's work that needs to be done on that input based on the requirements that come through, and then an output is generated. The station, using the separation of concern design concepts, shouldn't care how the input comes in and shouldn't care where the output needs to go. That's the job of the workflow. So really, to increase the confidence of the person working at the station, they need the requirements ready right there. Anything that requires to make the work happen, the input is fulfilled. And so they can do it very quickly and the output is fulfilled. Moreover, the output needs to move on to the next station, and that's where we're going to make sure that they're not bottlenecked if these are not picked up very quickly. Let's take an example. Here's an assembly station. Ingredients come in. The assembly has to do some work, the assembler, based on the order, which is the data coming in, and then he has an assembled product. If this particular station staff member, the assembler at that station, now they need to realize, oh, I'm out of ingredients. I got to go back and either call up the prep or somebody else, hey, I'm out of rice, I'm out of avocado or something like that. Now they're doing something not relevant to that particular station. That should not be their job. Moreover, the assembled product sitting there, if they have to take it out, leave the station and put it somewhere else, or have somebody else to do it, that's fine. But if they end up leaving the station or doing something outside the work, which is assembler, then they are not being efficient. Now they have their mindset in multiple places than one. And you want to really have these staff members really focus on what they're doing so they have a much more higher performance and confidence in their work as well. So let's now talk about the workflow. Workflow really sits between two stations. You've got the input and output of each of those two stations. The workflow's job is to take that output from the previous station and bring it into the input in the other station. Okay, so as an example, here's an assembly to delivery workflow. So the assembled product somehow, when it's done, just disappears from the assembly station and then appears at what we call a delivery station or a pickup station or however the retailer decides wants to do. Even in that station, the product just sits there, right? So when that product sits there, if there's a person involved, meaning it's behind the counter, then that's the work. When the customer comes in, they take the product out and give it to the customer. Or if it's on a shelving unit somewhere, customer comes in, they have to do the work to decide where the product is, where it is, if it's too high, too small, multiple names, confirm, take it and go. Nonetheless, that is a separate station and there's a workflow that needs to happen. We want to minimize that energy work in each and really make that focus on the needs of that particular station. Okay, so this is a concept that we use when we start modeling automation in logistics for retailers as we continue to enhance it in our labs. Let's focus on the workflow though. So this is the impact of implementing automation. We looked at all different ways that you can start implementing automation in your logistical platform or logistical network of workflows. And what we learned very quickly is that the workflow is gold. This is where you want to begin all your automation process. And we'll talk about that why. The most important aspect of any automated process is start with the workflow. Why? Initially, we said the future of retail is that every station will scale out its I/O, meaning its input and output is now can produce double or triple because you've automated that particular station. If your workflow is not updated, then that station will be bottlenecked, essentially. It cannot fulfill those outputs to go to the other station. So, and at the same time, you are now bottlenecking the other station that they can't even get all the orders and they're just sitting and waiting because they don't have the capability for that output from the other station to come to their station. So it becomes an underutilized investment. So a lot of retailers will have a quick idea, let's just automate all these stations. You can, but you're not going to get that money back very quickly because what connects them is like the highway. You want to put more lanes on that highway so that more of what you're automating, because you want to increase your ROI, you want to push that more into it and increase it as much as you can. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So we really guide on that. Anywhere you want to start, the workflow is where you want to begin. And we're going to go a little bit more detail exactly how you want to implement that automation. So when you want to start working on that workflow, even if those stations at the end are not automated yet, you want to build it out knowing fully well what's the expected work I/O from these stations in the future. So now I'm thinking, okay, station A and station B are not automated yet. They're producing X and Y. I want 2x and 2y. So I'm going to build a workflow where it can allow for that 2x output to be delivered as a 2y input to that station. So you're doubling your flow, right? So in that case, now you're building that out, even though may not initially be utilized, but it's ready for those stations to be focused on and automated. And now you have a lot more flow going through for increased ROI. What we recommend also, now that you know this, where do you start? Which workflows you want to start? You want to work with the one that has most friction. And really the most friction one is when you have different kind of logistics come together. So like if you look at the ordering system, so you have a customer logistics, which is highly dynamic, and then you have the internal logistics of the retail. That's a great place to start. That's a place with highest friction because now you're solving a lot of problems in one hit. You've got the customer experience elevated and the internal logistics experience is also elevated. And where you start working backwards on that. And slowly but surely go back to the back of the house, and you'll gain a lot more value than starting in the back and going forward. So we'll tell you why. The other thing that people don't realize, a lot of stations are actually have dual workflows. They go forward and backwards. And essentially what we recommend is that the workflow should be unidirectional, one way to go out. So a lot of return orders, for example, is on the same station that's producing the product. What you want is a whole different station that deals with that return orders rather than combining a lot of this. Separation of concern design is highly valuable, and then it can allow you to really measure the ROI for each station. While you're elevating the workflow, while you're automating the workflow, think about how you want to elevate the experience at either both ends of the workflow. Okay, so that way that it's much easier to start to think about how to trigger that workflow and minimize the energy needed for the staff member of that station to be involved in it. And as you're progressing in this process, start looking at each station as a cost and profit and loss module, right? Look at the cost and revenue from every station coming out. Because when you automate it, now you have access to data. You understand the flow a little bit more. Now you can step back and see, okay, where is the bottlenecks? Where can I put more money in? Where can I enhance more? How can I change my automation strategy to really kind of get the cost really down and the revenue up on those? So this is what we're thinking about workflow and how we believe in really taking that step to start automating your logistics in your internal retailer. Okay, there are actually two models that we want to share with you today that we're applying already of how we can start taking these concepts like workflow automation and what station involved to participate in that upgrade. One we call pre-station. So you got a workflow that's connected to a station in the aftermath. So essentially one option is to automate that workflow and everything about station B in this case. You're not automating the production of the output of station A. You're taking the production output of station A and you're automating it into a whole new automated station that you're seeing right now. The other model is what we call station-to-station workflow automation. Essentially, you are between two stations and you're taking the output of one of the stations and the input of the other station and making that bandwidth I/O much higher, even though if these two stations are not fully automated, but you have a huge amount of highway, essentially, more lanes that later on that you can go in and start upgrading station A and B at the same time. And that way, because the workflow is already been established. So these are the two, what we recommend when you start looking into automating your logistics in your retail. Let's take some examples of how we can apply these things. The pre-station tends to be more towards the end of the logistics, so like in ordering, as well as other aspects. So if you recall, we had this traditional retail setup, which is kind of cool, and essentially it has no automation whatsoever. So we're not going to start here, but since most retailers already have an ordering system, a digital ordering system, so you are really a hybrid system, we're going to go ahead and just kind of jump into that model. So essentially, we've got the ordering and the orders are fully automated. There's no human communication needed, assuming if you implement it really well, if it's bidirectional. And the assembly now is the station that's getting those digitized orders, and now they're going to deliver it out to the pickup. So let's apply the pre-station model here. Now, since we want to go backwards, we already have the ordering system optimized and automated in a way. And you can continue optimizing and automating the ordering system as you go. Now we want to deal with the assembly and pickup. So now you can imagine the pre-station is going to involve itself getting the output of the assembled products and somehow deliver it to the customer for them to pick it up. You want to remove a human workflow, you remove the human-to-human communication and make that transparent. The cool thing about this setup is the assembler now is focused on producing the product and putting it somewhere, and somehow that will just simply be taken care of so that when the customer comes in, the customer doesn't have to think about it. They go somewhere and the order is right there for them to pick it up and they can leave. That's essentially what the automation world will do. And since that workflow is now automated, now you have more data. You can assess everything from A to Z, from assembly to pickup, which many retailers don't have access to, but now you can. And more to that as well, it has more information about the ordering system and who is being ordered. And as well, you can present that information back to the customers so they have a transparent view of what's going on in the business even more. So they can understand how busy it is. If their order is ready to pick up, it's very clear to them when they want to pick it up. As opposed to a lot of retailers today, when they finish assembled an order, there's an algorithm that calculates, okay, it's going to be like 5 minutes for each order to happen. But rarely that comes on time. How many of you actually went out and pick up your order when it said it's done and it's not ready yet? So this will get it to more real time, more realistic expectation of the order being finished, as an example. So that is how we want to go. Now that we have that automated, for example, we're not going to talk about the implementation of it. Anybody can do it this way. We do it very differently. We're going to talk about now, if that's automated, what's the next step? We said we're going to go backwards from there. So in this case, we're going to apply the station-to-station automation. So now the assembly and the prep are not being automated. We still have an assembler and we still have a prep person in the back. But what we're trying to do is now increase the confidence of the assembler, where their inventory for the orders coming through is always there and ready to fulfill those requirements and produce it to the customer for them to have. So essentially what the prep then will have is a screen, for example, informing them what they need to prep next or what they need to prep later, so that the assembly knows fully well that any orders coming through will never be off and will always have the current inventory, and they can focus and continue from one order to another. A little bit gain of minutes and seconds is a lot of money. In fact, you gain so much that you can take advantage of producing 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 products at once. Not only that, now you have access to the inventory and knowing exactly what the assembly has or available from the prep and the assembly to know that what orders can be fulfilled or even what the menu looks like at that particular time. So the more you start automating, you're making the customer more confident about the retailer, and the retailer staff are more confident as well, and you're removing the need for anybody to manage between these two stations. And every staff member is focused on the station that they're at. So this is highly beneficial for that automation process. So, and you continue this process. These are just two simple basic examples. And of course, if your logistical system is a little bit more complex, this is how we take a look at it and you start kind of stepping through this process. Now let's dive deep a little bit on the delivery workflow. Why? To kind of nail down some of the benefits we have. This is a standard shelving handout area behind counter method of when you have an order coming, assembled, when is it being ready, and when is it going to be picked up. Each of those different phases takes a certain amount of time. And what we need to do is optimize these particular times to increase the ROI, efficiency, as well as confidence and experiences, both internally and externally for the retail. So really what we want to do, let's say you introduced a system, essentially, which is an automated delivery system. We really can't deal with the assembly time in this case because we're not automating the assembly. So that time can vary because it's a person doing the assembly. However, when the assembly is done with the product, the goal for automation is now the ready time is under 5 seconds. Product is ready, done. The system will take that order and do something with it just to make sure it's in a state of readiness. And when it's in that state, everybody's informed, or that particular customer is informed that this product is ready. And when the customer comes in to pick it up, it should take less than 30 seconds. This is almost about 90% improvement in performance. So which allows the assembler to gain that additional time to produce a lot more products for the same time they had before, consistently at all times. You can always add more features to the product to track what are the products, how many coming out. You can weigh them if you'd like. You can size them up if you'd like to take more advantage to understand your the products coming out and the cost that you're putting into the system itself. So this is how it looks like it's divided. Between the assembly and ready time, the staff is focused on that station and producing amazing amount of products. Whereas the W2 time, the customer doesn't have to hunt for their product. It just simply walk in, there's a system, they scan, whatever, however you want to implement it, they get the product personalized to them, clean and simple, without too much congregation, take it and leave without any error. Fully automated, so it's consistent performance for everyone. The value for a retail, of course, is the long-term benefits for the staff members working, because they don't have to leave the station often. They don't have to have multiple thinking processes going on, whether I have enough, whether the person who's going to take my assembled products is going to be taken care of properly. You're minimizing injuries, minimizing lost time. You're reducing sick leave, absences, turnover. It's all overall increased productivity and a lot more satisfaction at the job. It's also, at the end of the day, will reduce a lot of costs of the employer. So there's a huge amount of benefit. Time is money. So this is kind of what I really wanted to share with you guys today. We covered a lot of stuff. As I said, we can dive much deeper into a lot of these topics. And we want to share that and would love to hear your comments on this in the future and what other sessions you think we can really work on. So this is kind of a high-level view. What we guide a lot of the retailers who are looking to automate or thinking about what robotic solutions or automations they want to bring, really consider how that's going to affect you in the short term and in the long term. You may decide to change some of your logistics to adapt to something like this, but essentially start with the most friction, work backwards, open up that data to increase confidence of your customer, and you also have, as a retailer, more data, more insights than you've ever had before. So you're thinning out the business actually, while at the same time producing a much higher bandwidth of I/O between you and the customers. So that's really what we have for today. And thank you so much for everybody watching. I know this was our first session. It's a live session. And we're excited to continue this for more. So if you have any questions on this, please let us know. If you want some ideas to dive more deep into some of these aspects, we're going to talk about more of our thought processes in the B2B sector market, how we want to go in implementing automation for a lot of the QSR, the quick serve market, which is really very hot right now. And we'll go from there. Okay, well, thank you so much, guys, for watching, and I look forward to the next session. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys very soon. Enjoy these photos of our team really having fun while working on these kind of technologies. Thank you so much, and let me know if you guys need anything else. All the blessings.